Yes, Your Worship, I'll bring forward the zoning amendment bylaw number 28.8, being a bylaw to include grocery, pharmacy, shopping center, and health center as permitted uses in CD 09, comprehensive development zone 9, zoning district, and to move public assembly and entertainment from an accessory use to a permitted use, receive third reading.
Motion by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Sauls. Floor is open for discussion. Councillor Sauls.
Your Worship, I've made a few notes that I would like to read. The zoning amendment has been a high-spirited item. Many community members have shared their opinion on the street, and then others have given their opinions to the public hearing process. For me, sleep deprivation has been high over the last 2 weeks, and I'm sure that my colleagues have experienced the same. Input from the community from both sides of the issue has ruminated in my mind, and I keep hearing the words, "I know you'll do the right thing." Each of us around this table has been involved in business in this community, and many of us in the downtown core. Some of us own buildings that have commercial rental space in the downtown core. We have a vibrant and picturesque heritage downtown, maybe one of the most photogenic main streets in British Columbia. Where else can one go where a sign reads, "Funeral Chapel, Second Chance, Escape Within," all in one building? The reality is that we've morphed from small-town BC into a premier destination resort community due to various year-round outdoor activities. Business is alive and well, and growth will be inevitable for those willing to embrace it. We as council have an obligation to the entire community to encourage growth in a fashion that meets our needs as we continue to evolve. Change is the only constant in life, but many of us fear change because of the unknown outcome. We have all seen change over the years, and many have feared this only to realize it was all for naught. Building of the Alpine Shopping Center, building of Southside Grocery, revitalization of the downtown core, movement of Pharmacy off of Mackenzie Avenue, building of the resort, and expansion of Boulder Mountain facilities. My vision for Revelstoke champions growth in all sectors: the Moodus Loop intersection, outdoor infrastructure, the tech sector, light industry, tourism, and continual upgrading of city services. After fluctuating back and forth on my decision over the past 2 weeks, I have come to the conclusion that I will support this amendment on zoning in this fashion. I ask that Mr. Hall, his company, and the landowner work with the city to connect this project to the downtown with a vehicle lane that extends to Farrell Road and the rest of the community. And I also ask that the exterior treatment of the project reflects the heritage nature of our downtown core. I do believe that this is the right thing to do. I feel that this project will complement our community as well as open doors for other growth without infringing on the businesses we already enjoy and support. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Sauls. Anybody want to go next?
Are you going around the table?
I'm looking for people who have their hand up. Would you like to put your hand up?
I'll wait till we
Go ahead.
Okay, well, let's go around the table. Eric, how do you go next?
Well, like Councillor Sauls, I've spent a lot of time talking to people and thinking about the decision. I think it's a very important one. And I guess I have a bunch of points I want to run over, just thoughts that I think are important. It's a significant development. We'll talk about improving the intersection of the Trans-Canada Highway, the Moodus Loop intersection. These things cost money, and the developers will be required to pay a very significant amount of fees for that. This brings in tax revenue, as well as development cost charges, which help us develop in the area. A second part of consideration for myself was the whole issue of out-of-town shopping choice for local shoppers, for residents, as well as competition. I went back and read the retail strategy report. It's been dated now, it's almost 10 years old. That report said there was over $40 million of retail lost from the community each year, which we're not going to get that all back, or a few new stores are going to solve that problem. But it's a big issue. I mean, that's more money right now. I think this development will keep more people here shopping, and will provide more options. However, a different development, I think, would keep more. And the other issue I have right there with that one is competition and duplication. There's duplication in the two main anchor tenants here: the grocery store and a drugstore. If those were other things, or if those were more highway oriented, I think those would be better options. So that's it. Number 3, for me, I heard from a lot of people who came in and gave their opinions that we should hold out for something better. You know, let's do something a little bit more appropriate. But it's my feeling that waiting for something else won't necessarily bring about something that is better than this. This is a text change to the bylaws, so we're allowing, the ask is to allow for these added uses, but a lot is already allowed out there right now, and people who fit this criteria can come in and build something that maybe people would look at, well, that's not as good as what was proposed before. One of the biggest surprises for me, and I was thoroughly surprised about this through this process, is learning that we don't have, and I've talked to the planning department about this, we don't have any anti-big box bylaws on the books. There was discussions from past councils to implement size limits, but those were never transferred into law. So this development could be many other things other than what it is right now. When I look to the OCP and I look to the knowledge that I've gained in the past and as a councillor about what good planning is, I have to say, frankly, I don't think this is a great planning decision for the community, in the sense that you don't put independent services in an area that is self-contained, because there's several of them, without access for walking, biking, or other great access to what's out there. So if you ask, and you go back and look at the retail strategy, it says a lot about not putting things out on the highway. So for myself, I think, that's not great. However, the square footage of what is proposed to be allowed here, I don't think is a downtown killer that people talk about. We, in my opinion, and I can be challenged on this, don't have enough land available for development out of the highway so that it would destroy the downtown hands down. There are a lot of communities that people give examples of that they don't like, where there's highway development out of the highway. And I don't think we have an opportunity to go there just because we're so limited by the parks, by the rivers, by what's in the land. The next one is all the good stuff. Point number 5, people ask about, what about better access? What about better roads? What about transit access? How will the roads be improved, both at the Mutis Loop and directly all those roads that are in that area? Unfortunately, these kinds of decisions don't happen now. We're making a text amendment change on the bylaw that this is more something that's hammered through in a development permit stage, which is further down the road. So it's unfortunate that we have, that we're not able to, as a council or as a city, come forward and say, here's exactly what you have. This is a thing. I do take Fraser Hall's comments to heart when he said that he doesn't want to build something that the community doesn't want. However, this is not the question really that we can hammer out at this phase. It's not the appropriate phase to do that. Point number 6, because we approve these changes, we're not guaranteeing that this is going to happen. It's a concept. It's a drawing on paper. We're adding uses to it. Who knows? The business case might not work for it. We'll have to see. That's not something that we are teed up by making a decision today. And I guess the last sort of comment is just a general comment, point number 7, about the community is, I think we have to keep moving forward as a community. There was a lot of talk when I first arrived here 7 or 8 years ago of how we're going to turn into this giant resort that's going to be so foreign to us. And a lot of people think we maybe have already, but my solid belief is that we as a population are not necessarily going to increase unless we work. We're not going to increase unless we work really hard at it. And by keeping investment in business going, this is one way that we can do this. And those are my main comments. Unfortunately, it's not lead. It's thoughts to put out there, and I think we need to weigh in as we move through the decision.
Councilor English.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few comments that I'll make. I don't think I will take the kind of time that Gary and Aaron did going through what they're going to say. The career that I'm in, I see people every day, and I've made a real concerted effort over the last 3 weeks to talk to people about this issue. And the people that I'm speaking with, some of them have voted for me, some of them haven't, but all of those people are able to speak with me. And the support from the people that I've been speaking with on a day-to-day basis is overwhelming for this, and I will support it. That's all I have to say.
That was short and sweet.
Your Worship.
Yes, Councilor?
Yes, Your Worship. The macros to me are the increased jobs, population increase, and that population increase is going to be people that are likely to shop in town, because some of these jobs are going to be at the lower end of the scale, and they're not going to be the privileged people that are able to go out to Costco and shop. They're going to be more likely to be spending their money in town. Revelstoke's a brand. We are close to heaven, we're down to earth, we're pragmatic people. We are world recognized, but maybe that's not locally recognized. Chamber members, you know who you are individually and as a group, but you may not know that you have arrived collectively at the next level, the next stage. We did not really hear from the resort. The resort is moving on to the next level, putting a plan in place to increase summer traffic to the resort next year. That ride is going to be the first one outside of Europe, and it's going to pull the people into Revelstoke. Because to get to the resort, you have to go through Revelstoke. And that resort has really pulled the people into this town that used to go by on the highway. And this development out on the highway is for the skidooers with their trailers. The parking's got to be looked at. It's for my son when he's pulling his great big trailer to go north and camp. They can pull in there and get what they need without coming downtown. But they're still going to come down later because they're going to come and see Grandma and Grandpa. But I just see that the Chamber has done an excellent job of increasing the shoulder season. The Access Monday that was in partnership with the resort was a really good thing to do, and we're going to see more of that going on. We're not a town on the side of a highway anymore. The protectionism that went on was the right thing to do when we were a town on the side of a highway, but now we're a destination. We're a friendly and inclusive town. The highway improvement is the Revelstoke experience, and from our OCP, it's an opportunity to connect more with the traveling public, to offer a gateway to the Revelstoke experience, to stimulate interest and curiosity about what's Revelstoke all about. And we need more than a kiosk up there when we're planning. We need a circle of stone, well built, and those mountains will sell themselves. And I call them the judge. It's Begbie. They stand there and look at Begbie. They're sold on this town. They're going to come in and they're going to look at Boulder and they're going to say, we're coming back here skidooing in the winter. And Parks Canada is doing a wonderful thing. I don't really agree with what they're doing environmentally, but they're building bike trails on the lower part of the mountain. And the young boys in Columbia Park are all excited about that. They want to get over there and get on their bikes, so that biking pedestrian trail is going to be great. And I see an opportunity for links and synergy, and rather than a parasitic viewpoint. And I see a chance for linking a world-class wooden-built bridge that comes from the Railway Museum and lands in Cooper's parking lot, so that there is that link. And I see when we do our housing strategy this winter, I see that we need to build some more density housing between Cooper's and the river. There are so many people my age in town saying, what's happening with Mountain View? We want to move there. They want to walk to Cooper's, they want to walk to their drugstore, which now has a post office. I mean, there is some really great stuff to come for Revelstoke, and I'm going to vote in favor of this development.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brothers?
I unfortunately may be a little bit longer than everybody else, possibly because I'm a wordy lawyer, but unfortunately, this is the only forum within which all of us councillors get a chance to communicate, to hear from each other, and to hear our points of view. I'm hearing what my fellow councillors are saying really for the first time, which is a very difficult and frustrating process. So I'm going to be a little lengthy, but please bear with me, because I think I've thought about this, we've all thought about this, and I'd like to make the points that I have to make. The decision, as everybody says, that we have to make today is, in my view, has the potential to fundamentally change the character of our town. We've all struggled as councillors. You've heard everybody say what they had to say, especially since the public hearing, and trying to figure out what is the right way to go. I realize that I'm struggling because I'm not comfortable with the process that has taken place. I think we're moving too quickly, and I'm very concerned that we haven't done adequate due diligence. I'm not a planner, I'm not an economist, and without the proper information, the only thing that I have to go on is a gut feeling. Everything in my gut tells me that that's not good enough. And this isn't the decision-making process that I think that I was voted in for. And I think the public is expecting us to do a considerable amount of due diligence for this decision to be made. And so that is of major concern to me. Out of sheer discomfort, and I have to say fear, I've spent several days doing some research on my own. I reviewed all of the letters from the public hearing, and by and large, all of those letters raise concerns. I also heard all of the comments at the public hearing, and by and large, they all raised concerns as well. I'm also told, and I haven't heard this directly, but I'm told there's a silent majority out there who feels that this project is very, very good for the community. And you know what? I'd like to hear from that silent majority, and I haven't heard from that silent majority before I make a decision. I think that's important in my decision-making process. So if we haven't heard from that silent majority, I think it's incumbent upon us as a council to make sure we do hear from that silent majority, and that they participate in the process, and we hear what they have to say. Having said that, I'm calling out that silent majority, and I'm saying to you, you owe it to your fellow citizens to come and participate in the dialogue, so that we can all understand what your point of view is, and from the point of view of everyone, and express your ideas and views. From a selfish point of view, I think that silent majority, if they have something to say, have an obligation to this council as well, because we have to make the decision, and we have to make it based on information and good in order to make a good and informed decision. I'm going to go back to a little bit of the concerns that I have. The highway corridor was originally made a C4. That was for the traveling public. One of the things that I don't know, and one of the things that I would like to know, is what's the history of this? Why was it done originally? And is it still relevant today? The other thing is when it was zoned C9, why is it that the things that we're now asking to be put into that zone, or to expand, weren't put in at that time? there must be some historical record. I mean, these people who made those decisions at that time were competent people and knew what they were doing. So I'm wondering what was the history, because if you know the history, then you have some bearing and some gateposts to figure out, what should we do in the future. The only insight that I can find in looking at the past is Jeff Battersby's letter, and Jeff probably knows as much as, if not more, about this city than anybody else. And I refer to his letter, and I'm just going to say, he says, "I believe that the property is currently zoned highway commercial, and that the use is restricted to the needs of the traveling public: hotel, motel accommodation, fueling services, convenience stores, restaurants, and fast food outlets. I had understood that the original zoning was for the specific purpose of keeping a broad range of retail and other services limited to the commercial core, downtown Revelstoke." And I asked the question, is that still relevant? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I don't know. We haven't gone and looked at that situation, I don't believe. I also went back to try and figure out, well, what did the Advisory Planning Commission think about this? And they met on July 7th, 2015. And when they met, they came up with 7 concerns that they asked council to consider. I don't think this was ever brought before council. I might be missing it, but I don't think we ever discussed it in council or raised those concerns. And if we did, then I've missed it somehow, and I blame myself for that, but I've missed it, and I don't think we went over their concerns. And I certainly, if I had seen those concerns or thought about them, I would have said, you know what, I'd like staff to go back and take a look at those concerns and see whether or not we can mitigate the concerns or what the situation is there. I've got some other concerns as well. The zoning amendment bylaw says grocery and pharmacy, and I understand that. There's definitions in the amendment bylaw. It says shopping center and health center. Well, shopping center, does that open up the whole ball of wax? Does that mean anything can go in? And why are we then limiting it to grocery and pharmacy? I mean, what's the difference? I don't understand that. Perhaps it's my lack of understanding, or I should have asked the question before, but these are questions that I have. The other question I have is, we don't know what the anchor stores are going to be. We don't know who they are. We don't know what products they're selling. That's of concern to me. It seems to me that if a developer comes into town and says, I would like you to change your zoning, that is a fundamental change to the zoning, then I think we should have as much information as possible to know whether or not what they're bringing into town is good or not good. Is it going to compete with our businesses or no? Is it going to be a viable, strong retail service? Or is it going to die after 2 years? All of these things are very important because it is a fundamental change to the community. It seems to me that we ask for more information and detail for someone who's building a shed or a storage unit in Revelstoke than we do on this particular unit. So that's of some frustration to me. What this all raises for me is that we're possibly not controlling the process. I'm sure the developer is doing what he thinks is worthwhile and what he thinks is best for him. I mean, in speaking with Fraser, he said, I do these all the time. I mean, he knows what he's doing. But the question is, are we asking the right questions? Have we got the right information to know that we're doing what's best for this community? I also went on the internet, and I found, contrary to what people said at the public hearing last week, 2 weeks ago, I found lots of stuff dealing with small towns and malls coming to small towns. These reports go back 25 to 30 years. This is nothing new. They deal with chain stores, with malls, with big box stores, and how they affect communities when they come to town. The reports are from the US, they're from Europe, they're from Great Britain, they're from all over. There's a variety of facts, big cities, small cities, big stores, little stores, everything. But the interesting thing is they all seem to come down to the same conclusions. I picked out two of these. One of them is a 1992 report that says, when the mall comes to small town, how to shape development with carrots and sticks. It's a University of Massachusetts report. And I just want to comment on some of the things in this report. It says the typical impacts of a regional mall on a small town. It says there are economic and fiscal impacts. Well, we know that. I mean, we'll have an increased tax base. That's the great thing about it, yes, without a doubt. But we also have to offset the service costs that we must bear as a result of such a mall coming to town. There's environmental impacts. There's traffic impacts, and we all know that's a big factor in Revelstoke. There's community character impacts. And here's an important one that I want everybody to make sure they understand. Impacts on downtown, and I'm just going to read from this report. This is probably considered to be the most significant impact of the regional mall. Malls hurt downtowns. The most obvious shift will be in retailing. Local department stores unable to compete with the mall in terms of prices and variety will inevitably close. Family-owned stores will suffer and few will survive the transition. An overwhelming number of the mall's tenants are already in the marketing region, as there are no new markets, only stolen markets. Furthermore, a herd instinct prevails once a key merchant moves to the mall. Others follow suit. Downtowns will be forced to carry specialized goods not offered by the mall, or change its focus towards being the civic hub of the community rather than remaining as a traditional commercial and retail center. Now, I hear that people say that competition is good, and, you know, if businesses downtown can compete, so be it. Somebody else will go in to take their place. What I find in this report is that when you lose a business downtown, what you do is just scare off other businesses from trying, because they see that, you know, why should I stick my neck out if somebody else hasn't succeeded? So that's where you get into the difficulties with downtown and the devastation of downtown. Now, again, I said, well, you know, why do we care about small businesses? Why do we care about small businesses in our town? Found another report, Say Goodbye to Small Retail, Should We Care? This is a report from 2012. It's a British Columbia report, so it's relevant to our situation. And here's what they say about small businesses in downtown. These are the conclusions. Our main arguments then are that small businesses offer numerous positive externalities. More money stays in the community. More jobs are created per dollar invested. They provide unique, sometimes local products and services. They offer friendly, ongoing the distance service. They are usually more involved in supporting community initiatives. They provide a stronger sense of place and community, and there are possibly some environmental benefits associated with them. Thus, if we take a full cost accounting approach, what small retail businesses provide goes beyond the $1 or $2 that can be saved by shopping at a megastore. If we accept that small businesses and retail establishments have all these positive externalities, then it behooves municipalities to ask, what are we going to do to protect them? I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm raising these questions because I think we should raise the questions and we should get the answers before we move forward on this. Are we any different than these other small communities? Can't say for sure, but I suspect we're not. What this whole decision boils down to is, what do we want to see as a community and how do we want to grow? I want to grow, I love economic development, but I want to see the right economic development. Revelstoke has a tremendous amount of advantages, and this is one of them. This is an advantage that we have right now. We haven't been faced, until now, with the challenges that other small communities have had in dealing with this issue. But now we have the opportunity of looking back and seeing what other small communities have had, challenges they've had for 25 to 30 years, and how they've met those challenges, and to ask whether or not we're able to meet those challenges and find some solutions. This report that I just referred to that talks about when the mall comes to small towns, talks about, you know, what small towns should do when the mall comes to town. What's their due diligence? Some of the reports that I read also have ways of countering the problems and the difficulties that small towns encounter when malls do come. And maybe we can come up with those solutions to make it a win-win with the developer. That's what I'm hoping for. The main thing that I take from all of these reports, and again, I say, all I'm doing research. I'm just this one counselor trying to do some research and figure out what to do. But the main thing I take from all of these is do your homework, be in control, and make sure you're in the driver's seat. One quote last quote I'll give to you. It comes from when the mall comes to a small town. Towns must be prepared to negotiate with developers to ensure the community interests are protected. The agenda must include off-site needs not normally covered under impact fee assessments. Mall developments have dramatic community impacts, and the towns must negotiate in good faith to ensure the community's quality of life is maintained. Too often, poorly developed proposals result from the ability of an inflamed minority of citizens to influence decision makers, or stem from the developer's ability to overwhelm or dazzle the community into a quick decision. I'm not saying that we don't carry on with this developer. I hope that this developer sees the opportunity that we have in this community and the fact that we have tremendous opportunity, and that he's going to be patient and be willing to work with us. One thing that I can say is I believe strongly in Revelstoke's strength, its ability to grow economically. There's been tremendous growth in the last year, tremendous economic growth. We have incredible potential. Opportunity is now coming to us. If this development doesn't work out, I feel strongly that there will be other developments, and we can go out and seek those other developments and the kind of developments that they want. I can guarantee you that the developer has done his homework, and he knows what's best for him. All I'm saying is let's make sure that we do our homework and do what's best for this community. So with that having been said, I'm going to not vote for this, but with the hope that if we all turn it down, and I'm asking all of my counselors to turn it down, with the hope that we defer, we move on so that we have a new motion to have an open house in the community, hopefully with the developer participating. We have staff and whoever else we need provide council with a detailed analysis of all the issues and concerns regarding the development and any possible solutions. That we have a further public hearing at a time and a place when everybody can attend and everybody can participate. And if need be, we have another special meeting in order to communicate the way we're communicating today, which is really the first time that all of us have a chance to speak to each other. So that's all the points. Sorry it's so long, but
I just want to remind the council that if you abstain from voting, it's a vote in favor.
yes, I'm not abstaining from voting.
I'm not a lawyer. I'm just trying to figure out what you're trying to do. I hope everybody can appreciate how difficult this decision has been for everybody around the table, and I like to echo Councillor Sauls about the lost hours of sleep, contemplating and reading through all these submissions and looking at all the comments, and it's been a very difficult time, and that's good. The amount of public participation, I don't think that I've seen this since we talked about the ski resort, that we've seen the amount of concern in the community, both at this table and outside of it and in the media. But again, it's been a good process. And I have made a couple of comments. I won't be quite as verbose as Councillor Brothers, but I'll be quite brief. Actually, this vote is not about a $20 million project, $500,000 in annual taxes. It's not even about the 200 jobs that would be created. I look at it, it's about the expansion of our community, the expansion of our business community. It's about retail leakage, it's about increasing tourism, it's having confidence in the future of the community, the future growth of the community. It's not about us downtown and them on the highway, it's about us. It's about all of us and what our individual vision of the community moving into the future. Is there concerns? Of course there's concerns. There's lots of concerns. I've heard about the Victoria Road and Munis intersection congestion. Well, we've already started the process. We're out for request for proposal for design companies to look at that, work with the business community, have open houses with the citizens, look at how we can redesign that intersection to make it more efficient, make it better, make it able to handle the future growth of the community. I'm hopeful that this time next year, we will be in construction on that intersection, and when it's finished, traffic will be moving smoother and more efficiently. We should have a hotel on this site. Well, right next door to this property is a 2.2 acre site that's not involved with this, that is zoned for a hotel, and it's available for a hotel, and I'm actually quite confident that we will see a hotel there. Can we put another access through the back end to the Railway Museum? I think this is important. I think it's something that we should be looking at. We should be securing the property for that access, and we should work towards putting something there, whether it's vehicular, pedestrian, cycling, some kind of connection to another entrance into the community. Is the plan that's shown how the development will look? And my answer to that is not necessarily. A development permit zone gives the city more control on the design. I know the developers want to do the right thing, and we should ensure that this design is sympathetic to the downtown core. We can and should be using this opportunity to promote, bring more tourists into downtown, and I think that this is a great opportunity to do that. This will hurt the downtown businesses. I think it will help the downtown businesses. It will give locals a bigger and better selection of goods and services. It'll give them less reasons to shop out of town. We will have a better presence on the highway, getting more tourists to stop, to shop, to explore, and to stay in Revelstoke. I see more opportunities than I see threats, and I'm looking forward to the community moving forward, because my vision for the future is a community that expands, grows, great place to raise a family, create more jobs, and be a great place to live. Is there any more comments from council on this motion? I should actually apologize to Mr. Strachan. He was going to do a presentation, and Mr. Strachan, would you like to do this?
I'm only here available if council have any questions, Your Worship.
Okay. Is there any questions from council? Councillor Sells.
Your Worship, just to kind of get a handle on the development part of things, Mr. Strachan, we have the option as this goes forward to then say we want some control over how things are done. Is that correct?
Your Worship, there's the development permit process that proceeds, so should council approve it for adoption, so there's third reading, there's adoption. The applicant is required to make the development permit application. Part of that process is an internal review as well as an external review with outside agencies. We would be coming to council with a report introducing the application and providing a recommendation on studies that we feel are necessary. One of them would be very obviously the completion of a traffic study. So we would have those works completed, working with the developer to ensure that those are completed, as well as the design works for landscaping, for the parking lot, all the other components that are related to the mechanics of an actual development before we return to council with those drawings and with those documents for consideration. And from that process is where there may be recommendations that would result in changes, either prior to presenting to council, we work with the developer to adjust those components, or at the direction of council. And they go back and review with the developer various components. So how quickly and how successful that process works is really dependent on how well the developer and the city work together. It's dependent on that.
Thank you, Mr. Stratton.
Any more questions or comments from council? Councilor Lando.
Your worship, is it not also possible on any one of these use changes for the proponent to bring forth a request for a change once they have a more developed plan? That's my question to staff. Such as a tenant.
A tension?
A tenant, for example.
I think it would only be if the tenant's business didn't conform to the zoning bylaw.
That's correct, Your Worship. So if it didn't fit within the size restrictions, so we've limited the CRUs to 8,000.
Or the use.
Sorry, commercial retail units, so the individual units is to 8,000 square feet. So if it was to exceed that, yes, they would have to come back to council for a development variance permit.
So, to give you an example, the pharmacy is currently listed at a maximum of 1,000 square meters per unit. As another way of doing it, perhaps for anything else, is instead of, as some councilors expressed, sort of flying blind on who's going to be there and what it's going to look like, to instead do the text changes that we're doing now once we have a better idea of what the development will look like, such as a presentation of who is going to be moving in there and what they hope to be doing there. Because as far as I understand it, the actual drawings of what is presented, that's just a concept. That's not what we're approving today, and those will change as you go through the development permit process, but I hear concern expressed, and it's also part of my concern, is that we're making text changes, but we don't really know what's going to happen. And
Your Worship, I think I understand what Mr. Ross asking. Would we normally ask for the specific units, who's going to be occupying? If we were, there's no guarantee that that would be the way there. It's more about the use, more than it is the actual occupier. And that changes over time. Retail units switch from one retailer to another retailer. That happens. So it's more about the use, especially this particular phase, which is the zoning text amendment. With the development permit, would we have an expectation to receive more clarity on what retailers and what the facades are going to look like? Because retailers have certain facades associated with their particular quote-unquote brand. Yes, there would be an expectation at development permit to be much more detailed on who and where and what's going to take place.
Any more questions from council? Councilor Brothers.
Just a question, just to clarify, but at the development permit stage, we can talk about traffic and traffic flows around, and we can talk about design. That's all we can talk about, right?
Your Worship, it's a form and character, so it's related to any studies that the council feels is necessary, whether it's transportation network, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be related to traffic. It can be pedestrian, it can be cycling. It's transportation. Big trucks are being zoned for components. Normally that's associated with a transportation study. Normally it's not just vehicles. Normally the focus is on what the vehicles are doing, but they do include components of other forms of transportation. The form and character doesn't just include facades, it includes landscaping, layout, access, the types of vehicles that are going to be using it. And our engineers will be working with their engineering staff to ensure that that works and functions. There already was in some of the original design concepts, comments about, quite Revelstoke specific, particularly around snow removal. Multiple parking islands were originally proposed, which create obstacles for snow removal and where that snow is going to go. And it seemed to be quite open to that input because the development experience is not in Revelstoke with the high snow volume that we experience.
Any other comments or questions from council? We have a motion on the floor to approve the amendment changes to zoning amendment bylaw number 2088. Did you have a question?
I would like to entertain the possibility of going through the uses permitted. This is items Q through to U, and consider them individually.
I need some direction on that.
Your worship, after a public hearing is held, council is restricted in the changes that they can make to a zoning amendment bylaw. One of the restrictions is a prohibition against changes to use or density. And so it wouldn't be in order for council to decide that certain uses would be excluded from this list after the public hearing.
Okay. Any more discussion on the motion?
I'm wondering where Councillor Brothers seem to indicate inclination towards
An amendment?
uh,
Or my understanding, and I did speak with Mr. Chabot this morning about what the procedure would be. He tells me if council were to entertain what I was suggesting, in other words, that we step back and take a second look at this, and what we would have to do is vote down this and then bring another motion forward with these suggestions that I made in my submission. So that is the process that we have to go through, and my understanding, subject to what Mr. Chabot tells me, is that we must conclude this vote before we have any opportunity to go to the next vote. So if we approve this, it's a done deal, as I understand it. This is going forward no matter what. The only way to step back is by turning this down and making another motion.
Any other comments? Councilor Lando.
Your worship, thank you. My concern is when I said I don't believe that this is best practices in planning, is that by creating an individual unit out there on the highway that is largely accessible only by vehicle traffic, that is not the way to go forward. I feel the pulse of the community is a need for more competition in grocery. I think that's been fairly clearly enunciated, at least in my opinion. Shopping center to me just means being able to put the buildings next to each other without them being freestanding buildings. Same with public assembly and recreation, but my concern is with pharmacy. We have 2 pharmacies downtown, and also with health center, where we have numerous health opportunities downtown. We are going to be further splitting up those types of resources, which I feel will be in an area that is more accessible to more people. So those are my concerns at this point about the way it is put forward. To exclude those at this point, I don't believe, I could be corrected by staff, doesn't mean that the proponent can't still go forward with the rest of them and can't still present a more complete or a better idea of what's going to happen in the future. But out of caution, I think strategically it's an error to move those 2 uses at this point.
Because of no physical connection to downtown, is that what you're saying?
Or physical connection to downtown. I'm sure we'll work out transit to go there somehow, riding bikes, just general connection to the downtown. And let's face it, it's a big advantage to be out there on the highway, and I suspect we'll lose a pharmacy downtown because it's hard. I don't know if they're big enough for 3. That's just my conjecture at this point. I don't know if that's appropriate, but my concern is that, for people who rely on medical services, we are splitting them up, and we are also going against good planning principles by including all of these uses there. And people said very clearly to me, they want a better development, and when I say, hey, can we take the pharmacy out of this, and say, let's go back to the table and see what's available, I think that's impossible. I think that's the first ask, when we say, for example, Councillor Brothers says, let's try and drive a better deal and not take the very first thing that comes forward. I think this is part of it. I mean, it might be a deal breaker for the business case, I realize that's part of it, but I do think for the long term that's an issue. Frankly speaking, our hospital is in Arrow Heights and causes a lot of issues for people. Whether that was the right decision or not, it's a similar thing. We're putting something at the other edge of the budget.
I guess we could look at rezoning this property, move the hospital there. I was going to, if this was going to pass, I was going to ask about introducing a motion that staff be instructed to include a connecting vehicle, pedestrian, and cycling corridor from the end of Bend Road to the end of Farrell Road as part of the official community plan review, and that would be secured as part of future development. That's what I was going to ask to be brought in afterwards, if this motion passes. Okay, so Councilor Brothers and then Councilor Orlando.
Just a question to Mr. Strachan. What does shopping center mean?
It means, in the definition, it's commercial retail units that share walls. So you could qualify a shopping center to be the pharmacy with the CRUs that are adjacent to it. So it's where you're sharing multiple retail units within one property.
Okay, so the thing that I'm not clear on, we've limited it to grocery, we've limited it to pharmacy. Is that the only thing that can be up there, or can anything be up there? What?
These other uses, like shopping center is a use that appears in our zoning bylaw. And not to confuse the discussion, there's multiple things that are going on within the zoning bylaw that create some lack of clarity, certainly. It's reflective of the age of the bylaws. It's from 1982, and it's had multiple amendments over the years. So some of these uses, it just conglomerates multiple things. Shopping center in itself, that is the true component of it, is the combination of multiple units within one building, and then the proposal is to restrict those units, each individual unit, to not more than 8,000 square feet.
So do they have to be grocery and pharmacy, those other units? Or are we opening up the door to everything? I mean, I don't quite understand why we're saying, okay, only grocery and pharmacy, and then what happens to the other units? Are they only grocery and pharmacy as well?
No, it was already, the zone already allowed for all of the other types of retail uses without size restriction. Like highway retail.
And what are those?
Could be anything, it could be pet food, it could be any sort of
Could be
retail
anything.
unit,
Okay, so why are we limiting it to grocery and pharmacy in this?
We're not, we're adding those uses as allowable uses. So it's on top of all the uses that already exist, hotel, gas station, all the other uses that already exist within that zone. The proposal is to add these two uses to that zoning district, not to have that be the only uses allowed. It's to add those uses to the zoning district.
But again, I'm not clear as to what was existing beforehand in C9. Could you have a pet food store, or, I mean, was that allowed? Or I
Yes.
thought it was only hotel
Yes,
and restaurant.
yes, you could have any of those types of uses. As long as you could demonstrate that it was related to highway use.
Okay, so it's highway use. I mean, you don't need a pet food store with highway use.
Depends if you're traveling with pets. It's not specific in that zone, it's reflective of its age.
Councilor Orlando.
Well, I mean, I've sort of said my piece. I don't believe that pharmacy or the health center are good use.
Councilor Nixon.
I think we have to remember there's a whole other neighborhood over there, and I have heard from the silent majority, and they live in Columbia Park, and they are anxious to see that selection be there for them. I, as a community nurse background, do not see pharmacy going there, and I'm not going to vote against this because the developer is wanting that to be one of his lead stores, and I think we can work around that.
Any more discussions on this motion? All those in favor? Against? Motion's carried. I think this is a good place to take a 5-minute break.